Hello viewers, Marianne from Revealing Light Tarot. I know you're all waiting for that video that I uploaded and actually had to delete because I was just getting so many comments that people couldn't play it, so I couldn't leave it there. Now, basically what happened with that video, and then I'm going to leave it behind, it played absolutely fine on my laptop in my recording suite. No problems at all. It actually plays flawlessly in my YouTube software suite as well. But when I upload it to YouTube, it doesn't play for some people. Now, I have no idea why that's doing that. I don't have a clue. Other readers have been experiencing some problems. Certainly the content in that video looked at whether or not the Trump government was taking the US toward more of an authoritarian government. And in some ways, it also looked at why on earth the military would, or the Air Force would, I guess, capitulate in the way that they did in their personnel staying at the Trump Scottish resort. And then we have the new news coming now around Wilbur Ross and him threatening to sack or fire those in your National Weather Service that disagreed with Trump's who tried to correct the record because people rely on that the accuracy of that information. So I'll get to that after. I'm not going to go over that reading. I'm not going to try and upload it again because I spent hours and hours and hours trying to fix it for you. And at the end of the day, I have to say, well, that particular video, when something's very, very hard, it's a good indication to back off. So I'm just really putting it behind me now. I'm not going to upload it again because it just isn't, for whatever reason, isn't working on a public platform. It is working on a private platform, but not. So it's working for me, but it's not working for you. Okay, so we're going to move on and we're going to do something that actually does work for you. So let's have a look straight up at the week ahead for Trump. I would have had this for you yesterday for obvious reasons, but we're going to try it again. The week ahead for Trump. And then I'm going to move on to Wilbur Ross and, how blatantly, obviously, he was out of line, crossed the line, and, people are very, very upset now. This authoritarian type of totalitarianism does not have a place in a democracy. And, this is the, I guess, the critical point when you start to have public servants impacted. I do feel intuitively it's just the tip of the surface. I think when you tally up, Trump going to Mar-a-Lago, trying to make that the Southern White House, when you look at the meetings that he had at his golf resorts, dignitaries coming to visit him, security details, being at the resort, eating at the resort, sometimes even staying at the resort. I think if you start to tally that up over the 2 years, the possible emoluments violations are going to be quite staggering. Now, the Congress is the House is going to have a win on this particular issue because it is actually it's crossing the line, and we're starting to see how far that line has been crossed. So, Trump making money off being the president. Let's have a look. What's his week going to be like? He's going to be batting away a lot of this controversy, but I just feel the House is going to, they've widened that emoluments investigation, and I feel they're going to be successful with it. So, what's the week ahead like for Donald Trump? What's the week ahead? Draining, I'm hearing. What's the week ahead going to be like for Donald Trump? What's the week ahead going to be like for Donald Trump? And I also got a flash of his competitors as well. So that's on his mind, even though he said it's, they're just doing it for publicity. You've got three now Republicans, former governors, former members of Congress coming out now and challenging him. The GOP won't be holding primary debates. So what's the week like for him? We've got the Nine of Pentacles. This is all about, the focus is on the emoluments this week. This is all about having sufficient money for your needs. Now, I would like to say that with this hard push, and if you look back over 2 years, his rhetoric around, the Southern White House and, being able to work at his golf clubs, and the calling in to those, this, I think there was an intention here. Albeit a very shallow and obvious, transparent intention here to enrich, to gain financially resources in this way. But it is just the tip of the iceberg. There are bigger questions around foreign countries and how they might have played into this energy. Challenged by the Page of Swords. Yes, absolutely. This crow is carrying the truth, carrying the sword of truth. It's on the move. So they're the two signifier cards we have here for the week ahead for Donald Trump. The emoluments, possible, potential, alleged violations, the truth coming out. I said in my reading last night, which I'm not going to I can't upload, that if someone were to tally up what would be the possible expenditure for the taxpayer, it would be quite significant. It is a Tower moment here, the foundation of the reading. These emoluments could be one of the things that actually take Donald Trump down. Wow, okay, so can William Barr obstruct? No, because the evidence is out there in the public domain. The House announcing the terms of its impeachment inquiry investigation will allow for, I think, quicker turnaround of evidence and requests for evidence. But much of this has happened in plain sight. So it's already in the public domain. It's actually going to strengthen this week. I feel that the boundary has been crossed. The line has so blatantly been crossed. This is a Tower moment this week for Donald Trump. In the past, we've got the Ten of Swords. 2 years, why Trump? 2 years of such a flagrant abuse here. He's also he doesn't command the same support that he did in the past. You have Moscow Mitch McConnell talking publicly, saying that he would bring forward gun reform if the president made his wishes known. This is clearly somebody that is throwing this person under the bus. We've got these challenges coming out for him. His position isn't strong with this Ten of Swords. It's a downfall. It's at the lowest ebb. We've got the Three of Wands. This is commerce and expansion. That is the focus. This is on his dealings overseas as well. So there could be information coming out. Again, foreign dignitaries staying at his DC hotel. There could be some kind of investigation here that brings forward the extent of his financial benefit from the presidency. Remember back to when he first took office, and those reams of folders, and he said, "I'm no longer going to be involved with my business." It was a little bit of a show, a reality show. In reality, there has been fairly visible public shows of trying to Doral G7, trying to bring to use taxpayers' funds to enrich his brand and his business. Now, what this actually does show is that they may not be doing well. We've seen the footage of the Trump buildings, apartment buildings, the Trump name being chiselled off, in order, because tenants or residents that own property don't want to be associated with the Trump brand. So as this has increased, and again, I'm talking authoritarian, in reality, these lines should not have been able to be crossed, but they have. They have. And the government, when I say the government, I'm not talking about Congress, the public service has had significant pressure put on them. And I'm going to actually read on that. That'll be my next question. We've got the Ace of Cups, and this, I do believe, is the amount of feeling and the amount of angst that is actually going to ramp up this week in relation to this emoluments question. People are going to actually be judging, they're going, and it's not going to be a favourable judgment at all. I think this crosses Republican and Democrat lines. I think that this is one of the last straws in a very fatigued nation, a very fatigued world. This politicians enriching themselves, personal benefit. It's almost going to wake up some of those supporters in the red states, and it's actually going to drive them away from him. We've got the Eight of Swords. He's going to be restricted. I feel that his advisors, those in the White House, are actually going to really going to have to be brave enough to come forward and say, look, it's not a good look. It's not doing you any favours. It's also, I do feel the public service will be called upon, put upon now to look at some of their behaviour. We've got William Ross, his cabinet secretary, threatening to fire people in the National Weather Service because of this fiasco around Alabama being in the path of Dorian when it wasn't. So we're going to extreme. There's an extremist behaviour here this week. It is a tower moment for this person, this president. Look, the fear is that there will be digging around in the past. I do feel that with this Six of Cups, I do feel that there is more that it's just the tip of the iceberg. The resorts and the taxpayer use of dollars to stay in those resorts is just the tip of the iceberg. How often has the King of Pentacles come up in my reading? This is a businessman who's also the president. The Knight of Pentacles, there is going to be this is the outcome. This is around his use of or the government, the taxpayer funding enrichment schemes for Donald Trump. There's more news coming this week. The High Priestess, yep, this is actually secrets being kept. But I do feel they're going to come out. The Queen of Pentacles, all of these pentacles, the financial enrichment, but also questions around how solid is his financial position if he's enriching himself to this extent. The Knight of Wands, there is a plan in process. There is an investigation in process. It's actually going to be successful with this Star card coming through here. And we've got the Three of Pentacles. This is both the money, the dark money in politics, or the money in politics, but it's also coming together to fix something. So I feel that the blatant breaches of the emoluments laws are really going to come home to roost, so to speak, this week for Donald Trump with this Tower card. There's more news coming in relation to how much the taxpayer has funded this kind of enrichment at these resources. So that's where the focus is this week. The Democrats in the House will probably have lots to say about it. They've widened the scope of their emoluments violations, potential violations, investigations, and I feel that they'll have lots to say about it because this is all being done in plain sight. Okay, that's the week ahead for Donald Trump. Now, let's have a look at Wilbur Ross. There are very impassioned calls for his resignation. Very impassioned calls. I'm using my Crow Tarot, by the way. Okay, so impassioned calls for Wilbur Ross's resignation, threatening to fire public servants who really wanted to bring forward safe and accurate information in the path of, at that time, a Category 5 hurricane. Diabolical. Yes, he should go. Absolutely, he should go. But I doubt that Trump would, because this is someone who is a sycophant. I doubt Trump would accept his resignation. But let's see. Let's look at that question. Will Wilbur Ross resign? Will Wilbur Ross resign? Will Wilbur Ross resign? Queen of Wands. Okay, she's quite powerful, the Queen of Wands, by the way. In this deck, there are 2 lions sitting with her and protecting her. She has a crown on her head, and there is illumination here. The Queen of Wands is a plan being put into place, and it's also a plan that will gain momentum, because this Queen of Wands sees things that brings things to the surface, brings the right information forward at the right time. So I feel that the calls for his resignation will grow louder, because he's challenged by Trump enriching himself with this 9 of Pentacles. Interesting cards the Crow Tarot are bringing forward today. Foundation of the reading, commerce and expansion with the 3 of Wands. Again, we've got the self-interests of Trump. Wilbur Ross, again, this goes beyond just threatening to fire the weather people, the weather within your national weather service. Look, we've got the seas and the hurricane. There is also a foreign sort of aspect to this card, which tells me Ross's, I guess, sins, if you like, go beyond just trying to fire someone, people in the National Weather Service. This is around again enriching themselves, politicians enriching themselves. The Truth, the Page of Swords in the past position. Good on the media for coming out and following up this story when public servants are threatened with the sack because of just because they've done their job and done the best, brought forward the most accurate information. And look, this crow carrying this sword of truth is being buffeted by fairly heavy, strong winds, and I do feel the sympathies will lie with these public servants, not Wilbur Ross. What's the potential? This is the Ace of Wands. There is a plan to get rid of Wilbur Ross. I feel there are going to be growing calls. The Democrats will want him to go, and they will have the public on their side. Immediate future, illumination. These are yes cards. So I do feel that the calls are going to go so loud eventually that Wilbur Ross will have to stand down. There is also some information coming around this commerce and expansion question, overseas interests, overseas in some way. I'm not sure what that is, but perhaps I'll drill down on it. Right now, the fight will be on to try and retain Wilbur Ross, just as there was for Acosta to be retained. But unfortunately, by the looks of these cards, he's challenged by Trump's emoluments violations, potential violations. The atmosphere that this has brought forward, investigations. So there will be very, very strong calls from lawmakers for Ross to stand down and move on. The hope is the 6 of Swords, relocation. What's the outcome here? The 8 of Pentacles. This is suggesting that it's going to take work for him to go. We've got the Seven of Swords. People see this as a betrayal of independent public servants. Let me just get rid of my emails have just popped up here. People see this as a betrayal of the public service. The public service is supposed to be independent of politicians. The reason that this independence must be protected because the public servants are bringing forward accurate information, are supposed to bring forward accurate information, accurate investigations, accurate policies, or information that inform policies. The public servants aren't there to serve the politicians, they're there to serve you. Okay, so there was no blatant betrayal of that value than what we saw with Wilbur Ross threatening to sack those weather people who simply wanted to correct the record in order to not to ensure panic in Alabama when the hurricane was not going to affect that area. It again is, the King of Pentacles, Trump the businessman, Wilbur Ross the businessman. This might be okay in the corporate world, in the oftentimes corrupt corporate world. William Ross is a businessman, but it is not okay in government. And so those calls, that emotion, I'm feeling that emotion with that Queen of Wands coming forward here, seeing things very plainly that are oftentimes attempting to hide something. I'm feeling the emotion around this, and I do feel that the calls for his resignation will grow stronger. Trump will resist them, but I do feel that there will be work put into trying to get rid of him. I feel the Democrats are going to go in hard on Wilbur Ross. Okay, so I think the chief acting scientist is also investigating this as well with that King of Swords. So that Eight of Pentacles could be that the legacy, it could be the work that goes into this investigation, but it could also be leaving a legacy here to try and restore public trust and faith in the independence of the public service. Okay, so I just want to go, I know I've been following up Brexit. I just want to go quickly to Boris Johnson has now shut down Parliament for until October the 15th. His latest calls for a general election were refused again. He will be bound by the law. He tried, I think, to prevent royal assent on the legislation that will prevent Britain, the UK, crashing out of the EU on October the 31st. That receives royal assent on, I think, October the 15th. Is he going to last till then? Macron, the French president, has come out and said no more delays. Two cards have dropped out. We've got the Seven of Swords. This is some kind of betrayal, and we've got Judgment coming out again for Boris Johnson. The French president has said no more delays to Brexit. He's at odds with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who wants to give the UK an extension of time. Macron apparently is not budging. So he said he's seen no meaningful negotiations from Boris Johnson, which backs up the minister that resigned, Amber Rudd, from Johnson's government, who said she's not seen any meaningful negotiations. One viewer stopped by and said, "We voted for Brexit and not a deal." What, you voted? You voted for to crash out of the EU and cause severe economic hardship to you and everyone else? Is that what you voted for? Okay. I guess, I'm not pro Brexit. I'm not pro Remain, but I am certainly pro weeding out backroom, behind the door deals, holding back information from the public, and doing something so utterly chaotic and destructive as crashing out of the EU without any deal. Okay, so what's happening to Boris Johnson in the next month? Let's just throw that out there. What's happening to Boris Johnson in the next month? What's happening to Boris Johnson in the next month? What's happening to Boris Johnson in the next month? You know, I've just got the feeling that we're on the tail end of both Boris Johnson type politician and Trump politician, and we had to get here. How we got here was in seeing the extremes of these far right winged politicians, seeing them through the Queen of Wands eyes. Basically, there is a plan being put in place. That's the signifier card. Challenged by the Knight of Wands. This is another plan, two plans. The plan to stop Boris Johnson and Boris Johnson's plan to stop the plan that stops Boris Johnson. The challenge here with this Knight of Wands is this plan really can't get going. Who has the upper hand here, the Queen or the Knight? Definitely the Queen. Okay, so that's interesting. I feel the UK Parliament, the UK democracy is a lot stronger than Boris Johnson. We've got the devil, greed, avarice being chained to a certain outcome. And this is the crashing out, this crashing out without a deal. You know, Boris Johnson said it was a failure of statehood if Brexit doesn't go ahead on October the 31st. No, it is a failure of his leadership if the UK crashes out of the EU without a deal on October the 31st. Okay, what's in the past? We've got the Six of Cups. This comes up in my American readings too. People want to go back to a more stable political climate. You know, that we're fatigued and we're starting to now take it out on our politicians. And this is, again, what's happening in America. That's why whatever Trump does between now and however long he's got left in that presidency will actually cut him, will actually further alienate him. We've got the King of Swords. These are the lawmakers. It seems like they also have a plan, as I said, up their sleeves. Immediate future, Six of Swords, moving on, relocation. I think that Johnson may, by the time we get to October the 15th, may not be there. Okay, the Queen of Swords. Okay, so this, I feel, is the leader of the Liberal Democrats. She's actually come out now and says we don't want Brexit. Now that will complicate the Labor in the UK. Is they haven't taken the strong position that obviously the Liberal Democrats want to take, which is we don't want Brexit. Now, a lot of the disenchanted Tories, Conservatives, actually have joined the Liberal Democrats. They've actually got a membership base of 120,000 people, given that the Tories had, I think, 160,000 voted to put Johnson where he is. Hardly a mandate to take the UK into a recession, is it? The atmosphere around this is control. So the Queen of Swords. So the Emperor too is also autocratic. We asked how Johnson was going to spend the next month. He's certainly going to be trying to push forward this strong-handed tactics. So yeah, and it's about retaining control. The hopes and the fears, we've got the Four of Pentacles, insecurity, and of course insecurity around the economy. That's in the fear position. We've got the Empress card again. Now, this is my Russia card. So yes, there's that aspect to it. This is an outcome. The Empress card, one of my viewers said, could this be the Queen? It possibly could be the Queen. Now, it could be that, I don't know how this is all going to work, but if there is, Parliament's not sitting, so there can't be a vote of no confidence in Boris Johnson's government. I'm not sure what legalities are coming forward, but it seems like the Queen could be involved in some way, clarifying that the Queen and the government. Now, I just want to say, why did the Queen accept Boris Johnson's shutting down of Parliament for 5 weeks? She did that because she is supposed to stay neutral in all of these affairs. The Queen really can't. She's in name only. She doesn't have any real political power. But I am seeing the Empress there, and we've got loss here, loss for the government. So in some way over the next month, Boris Johnson is going to lose. I don't know what is going to take place between now and then, but it could be that he actually steps down. We've got a show of strength. So I'm really getting in some way alliances and coalitions are coming forward. The Wheel of Fortune, things are going to change for the better, and we've got the Lovers card here. There's also a karmic fate for Boris Johnson, whether he knows it or not. This is actually his Waterloo. It will either make or break him. All right, so that's the I guess the future or some of the conditions that could come forward. I'm still feeling that there will be alliances and coalitions that are just going to grow stronger against Boris Johnson, will actually in the end result in him failing to push Brexit through on October the 31st. Okay, so let's leave it there. That's the week ahead. Hopefully I'll have no problems uploading this this video, and we'll get it out there so that you can actually watch it. All right, thanks for tuning in.